welcome everybody after lunch. I hope I can keep you awake. I know it's the most difficult slot of the day. So we heard a lot of stuff about how companies like Emerald and Sage are dealing with the possibility of technology, and I will contribute a view from the humanities, as you will see from the hardcore humanities. I'll take you into the wondrous world of Brill. So this is what my talk is about, Brill. A scholarly publisher founded in 1683 in Leiden in the Netherlands. Here you see a picture of the canal where the company used to have its headquarters for many years. And here you even see our letters. You can still see it in the city, but of course we moved to the outskirts a long time ago. And by now we also have offices in the United States, in Singapore, in Germany, and also in China. So Brill is a leading publisher in selected fields in the humanities. To give you an idea of the size of the company, we have about 160 staff, more than 300 journals, 1,400 books per year. We provide 150 databases, and I will show you a few examples later on. You will be surprised. It's probably not what you had expected. As we are a public company, publicly listed at the Amsterdam Stock Exchange already for more than 120 years, I can be open about our revenue. It's 36 million euro, and approximately a little bit more than half of it by now is electronic, but still almost half of it is print. And so I will talk about Brill, but I will also talk about choices and infrastructures. Infrastructures that are needed to support these choices. And in a way, maybe I will talk about the tensions between those who make the choices in the publishing house and those who build and maintain them. That's me in my role. So to give you a reflection of what I've been busy with since I took on this role in the new formed operations department 4 months ago, I made up a dialogue which in a way has almost taken place, just from another industry. Why did the project become so expensive? You asked for a lift in a 2-story house. But I told you the lift would be only used once a year when my mother is visiting. Shouldn't it be cheaper then? So this sort of challenge to convince people who are not involved in providing the infrastructure, who are only involved in making the choices, is, I think, the common theme of my last month. And I was already introduced. My role in operations is quite diverse, including production, editing, printing, distribution, maintaining our websites and business application, and last not least, also IT and technology. So my mantra for the last 4 months, and actually earlier, has been always supported by this nice triangle that I'm sure you recognize, where always only 2 axes can be combined. I love this visualization because it really makes it clear. If you try to be fast and good, you will be expensive, and that is what makes our shareholders unhappy. If you try to be fast and cheap, you build probably something ugly that our editors don't want, and they are so important because they contribute all these wonderful publications. If you want to be good, we always want to be good, but we don't want to spend a lot of money, we will run into delays. And of course, then there's management who always wants everything, and that's simply impossible. So that's our challenge. I talked a lot already, a little bit, about that we are special, and I gave you some suggestions. It's not that I didn't know that before. I worked for Brill since 2011. And actually the company has a tradition of being special already for more than 335 years. Right now we are going through a phase of transformation. We have a new leadership team since May, after our old CEO retired. And we entered, not being a very big company, with big ambitions into 2 new markets, in Germany, where we bought a publishing house 2 years ago, and in China, where we opened an office. But one thing that remained the same is Brill's strategy to combine 2 concepts. And to say it with our new leadership team, these 2 concepts are publishing excellence and profitability. And we can also say it with our logo. How cool is that? have you ever really looked at our logo? It's usually very small, but when you look at it, you will see on the left-hand side Athena, the Greek goddess of wisdom and sciences, and on the right-hand side you see Hermes, the Greek god of commerce and eloquence. Now, I have already mentioned something about the people who make choices in our company, and those are usually publishing and sales. So these are actually a personification of our colleagues in our company. We have Athena, who stands for the editorial colleagues, and Hermes for sales. And where are we? In operations, technology, we are not part of the picture. So maybe that's a little bit what the presentation is about. We need to support the whole thing, but we are not really visible. And maybe our fate is to be invisible. We are visible only when something goes wrong, which you don't want, or we are visible if somebody comes to us and wants an elevator in his two-story house, and then we have this unpleasant conversation. But to get more into what makes us so special, or what we think makes us so special, I give you a few examples of that. For instance, we are, so I'm going to the next one, we are active in fields that are quite specialized. Our one key subject area for Brill has always been Middle Eastern or Arabic or Islamic studies, and in 1740, Brill published the first Arabic manuscript. Back in those times, that was really a technological challenge, and to some extent, of course, in very different setting, it still is. But next to that, we became later a publisher also of Asian studies, of classical studies, Jewish studies, Slavic studies, all language-related studies that require a lot of knowledge of fonts, also require expertise in non-Latin fonts. So what you see on the left-hand side is a picture from Frankfurt Book Fair, 1960. So for Brill, it's a very recent picture, where we say, you see it in German, we print and publish in all languages of the world. Well, that has luckily changed. Right now, our publication language is also mainly English, but we still have to deal, even in standard publications like books and journals, a lot with the challenges of inserting Greek or Hebrew fragments into a Latin text or a Latin type text, which brings us in very unpleasant situations with the Scopus Web of Science, who cannot process it, and then the half of the article title is gone. So these are the types of things that we keep ourselves busy with in operations at Brill. What we did do is also maybe something that not every publisher can say about themselves, certainly not of our size. In order to support all this in today's age, we created our own font, the Brill Font. You can literally go to our website and download it and use it in Word. And it supports 5,500 Unicode characters and is used really a lot by our authors. So they can send their manuscripts in a way that makes it easier for us to process it. So this is sort of the innovation and the technology that we are dealing with, believe it or not, but it has really helped us and made a difference. And the guy who designed the Brill is really one of the leading font developers in the world, who worked for Apple and Microsoft before and has made some really known fonts that you are probably also familiar with. Another area where we are special, next I mentioned the books and the journals, which are in our case also not always straightforward, are our databases. I mentioned that earlier, and we have quite a lot of them. And I just want to highlight three, so you have an idea of the world that I operate in. The first one is the Encyclopedia of Islam. It's one of our flagship products. It's really, in this field of study, the leading encyclopedia, at least that's what we think, but also many people who buy it and read it. But what you see when you look at the numbers on the screen is that we are now already working on the third edition. So the first edition was started, the editorial team was composed in 1890, and the first edition was published in the between 1913 and 36, so for more than 20 years. 50 years later came the second edition, which took almost 45 years to publish. Imagine, that's really exceeding the lifespan of an academic research career. So you need a long breath for that. And then we are now working on the 3rd edition, and God knows, probably it will not come out before I retire. In the meantime, we have gone electronic with it, so it's a database now. We still publish it in print. But also part of our world is that something like a CD-ROM, which we had since 1999, is sometimes still requested. Probably you don't know even what it is anymore in your publishing houses, but our users still use it. We also have still journals that don't go with an electronic submission system. So that's a bit what we have to deal with. Another publication group are text editions. Maybe some of you know it, maybe you don't know it. You have heard maybe of the Dead Sea Scrolls, scriptures that were found from the times of the emergence of the Bible, but that were not included in the Bible. And Brill is a quite known publisher of these texts, where we put the original fragment next to the Bible fragments, next to the English translation. And I can tell you, this is a hell of a job in terms of print, but also in terms of electronic. Try to get this responsive. And this is also something we need to support from operations as an infrastructure. It's wonderful. It's a really great place to work, but it's probably not what some of you know, although you also work in very special fields. And then, as a last example, and I could mention many more, we have primary sources. Primary sources online. So these are scanned material of scans of archival material from archives from libraries, which we put into a collection and which libraries can purchase for the users, for the historians or others to access those. And this is one example, the human rights documents online. For that, we sometimes print out websites and scan them and include them here. So how cool is that? And it's also our most expensive product by far. If you buy it as a one-off purchase, you pay more than $100,000 for it. So it's really difficult to plan income from such big investments that go over decades. And basically what we all think, if you want to do this type of publications, is that you need a rich uncle. Certainly for a company of the size of Brill. The good news is, at Brill, we have a rich uncle. We actually have several of them. The bad news is they're called shareholders. And at some point they want their money back. So I guess you're getting the point that being special is an opportunity, and it's really great to be unique, but is your unique selling point just to be unique, or is it also selling? That's also the question that we have to ask ourselves with our specialness. And in operations, we do this by entering a dialogue with our colleagues in business, in sales, and in publishing. So I'm getting to the phase where we try to manage this specialness. And if you look at the previous slides, the breadth of subject areas and publication type on the one hand, and the depth that each of them requires to do it well, in my view, commercially speaking, only knows one real answer, and that is the dilemma of standardization versus customization. You need to standardize somewhere, unless your uncle is really so rich that he doesn't want his money back. But that's a discussion that we are leading constantly, and it's a balancing act. Is it actually a good position to be so specialized that other publishers wouldn't even dare to do this thing because it's our unique position and you hope that you can monetize on that later? Or is it a bad position to publish those projects that other publishers wouldn't publish? And I don't think there's an easy answer, but this is the type of considerations that we are facing. So to steer that discussion for platform management, which is one area where we need to reflect the specialness of our publication portfolio, are these three scenarios that I drew up. Scenario one says one size fits all, where you have one platform and each of these different publication types needs to comply with very strict formats. And that's it. And if you have something as an editor and come with this great idea and it doesn't fit these formats, or you cannot supply our requirements, then we won't publish it. We have chosen for scenario 2, standardization per product type, where we have one online platform or one online environment for one publication type. So each of these, like the triangles and the stars, are publication type, and within this environment they can be really special, but they shouldn't deviate too much from that environment. Well, right now there's actually an interesting discussion going on within Brill whether we should take this one step further. For instance, for the text editions, whether we should actually leave the concept of platforms, but go into single product sort of environments where every text edition gets really its completely own right. If you hear our colleagues in publishing, the Athena side of things, they are really excited about that. They love working with Brill because we even consider this. Other publishers, they wouldn't even consider it. If you talk with our colleagues in sales, the Hermes side, they are horrified because they find that Brill is already fragmented enough. Why do you want to fragment even more? And in the end, we need people to purchase those things also. So that's the balancing act where we are playing a role in operations. Another area where we try to find a response to the diverseness, to the specialness of our company. Oh, sorry, I'm still at the web presence. So I just want to show you what we actually are doing now to deal with it, and then I get to the next topic. I show you the current situation. So we have now 5 content type platforms. One is for books and journals, another one for encyclopedia and text editions, and 3 more for primary sources, dictionaries, and bibliographies. So this has been quite fragmented already. Next to that, we have ourselves built a linking hub, which is hardly being used, surprise, surprise. But at least we have a way to show the world that we have one entry point into this world of content. We also have a lot of single product platforms for licensing reasons, for specialty reasons, for historical reasons, things that we took over at some point, and a subject-based platform as well, the Chinese reference shelf, which needs to support Chinese fonts and therefore was developed outside the normal platform. So this is obviously not the ideal situation with this high degree of fragmentation, high cost. What you also see with our corporate website, well, I'll get to that in a second, but that we abandoned by now, that we merged to the rest, that we had a different place for the print product and for the electronic product. So they were on 2 different places because the Brill.com corporate website included also the metadata catalog, and people were really confused. So what we are building now, what we are almost about to launch finally, and we have launched the first phase of that, is one unified Brill.com, where we combine 3 concepts that were spread over these 2 other platforms before. We offer the company information about Brill, we offer the metadata catalog, and also certain content types as well, those that comply with easy standards like books and journals and encyclopedia. And also, in terms of content, it's now our new linking hub to all the rest that is still there in satellite platforms, as we would now call it, where we have still quite a diversity, but it's more unified by having one single entry point. What I mentioned before, we are now also active in China and in Germany, where we also need to cater for those needs. So we are building a German page where people can find those books in German, they are German language. And just at Frankfurt Book Fair a few weeks ago, a collaboration with a Chinese ebook site was announced, something that, again, we from the infrastructure department have to support. Okay, so much about the platforms, and then I was already going to move on to how we organize ourselves as a partner to the business by realigning our department. We were formed just 4 months ago, and we were formed out of units that had grown over the years and are not necessarily logical. So we are, I think, commonly known as the black hole in our company. Well, this is pretty wide, but everything that happens between publishing and marketing and sales, where the real cool stuff is happening. So my ambition is to make this more transparent and also more clear. and also demonstrate to the business why we cost a lot of money and what we're actually doing for it. I, with my team leaders, analyzed the processes, and we came basically up with 3 major steps. It's not really a surprise, but it is a big consolidation step for us, where we call everything that happens between submission or entry of content and the provision of the product's production. This was, believe it or not, earlier split a lot between different teams. Like the printing was happening somewhere else than the desk editing, etc. So this is now basically the factory, step 1. Then we have a showroom that used to be the platform department, and the platform included also usage. It included also the web shop, the access. Well, we now just call it showroom. It is basically everything that concerns the display of our products, metadata, content at places where our customers go to find them. That also includes covers on Amazon. That also includes the Nielsen feed, the Onyx feeds, Mark Records, whatever. It does not include anymore the fulfillment side of things. And that is step 3. That used to be just the journal fulfillment team, but it now includes, it is supposed to include also, we are in the process of that, also the web shop access, invoicing that we are doing. And well, our hope is by presenting ourselves like this, we will be taken more seriously in the dialogue between the 2 business sides. Next to that, we also have overarching teams, workflows, data flows, and IT and procurement. And so this is how we want to organize ourselves. So this is still work in progress. It's not yet implemented. What is partly implemented, and I'm almost coming to the end of the presentation, is the way how we try to interact with the business. So this was the organizational side of things. This slide concerns the interactional side of the things. What we used to have, and what I sensed also from the presentation, at least from Emerald, and what I know from many other conversations with befriended publishing houses, is that there's always a lot of demand from both sides, editorial and sales, who both represent their constituents, and there is not sufficient supply. So how to make choices, which projects to pursue, and where to dedicate your resources. And so our approach, and we are quite hopeful that we are going into the right direction, is to start by streamlining the inflow of requests by having set up a ticketing system. When we receive a request, we don't just say yes or no, but we go through a decision tree to estimate whether it's a reoccurring thing, it's something we have done before, we have said yes or no to before, and to identify whether it's a real project that we are talking about, or just an idea or something that needs to be sorted out. We believe it is maybe not often the question that we get from the business colleague, that we also have the obligation to educate that colleague about the impact that what he or she is trying to achieve will have on our organization, in terms of hidden cost, in terms of resources that are needed, in terms of internal hours, external cost. Often people don't think about these things, and we try to make them more visible to those who want things from us. Once we are at the stage where we talk about a project, we want to manage projects more in a more streamlined way, and maybe more important, once we have an overview of all the projects, we have a tool to confront the business with the whole list of things that they have earlier asked us to do, and when they come with something new, we basically can now tell them, well, either you increase our resources or you tell us what we should drop from the list. And that totality of all projects, that's a very confronting dialogue. Everybody just sees their own things. Business development comes with their things, marketing, sales, and they all have very, very good reasons and a good business case. But in the end, if somebody has to make choices, then I think it's better that these choices are made with a holistic view on the entire list of projects, rather than just who shouts the hardest. So, I'm coming to the end, and I would like to get back to the question and to the topic that I started with, that Brill is really special. Is it so special? Of course it is. I hope you will all agree. We are a really special publishing house, and I guess all of you will say that about yourselves as well, and that's very valid. And that is actually my point. While Brill is certainly special in its own right, I guess the final point that I would like to make is that what I presented as dilemmas in our company, namely standing between the supply side, the publishing side, the Athena side, the wisdom side, and on the other hand, to be able to satisfy the demand side, the sales side, the Hermes side, is actually a very nice metaphor for the role of operations or a technology department in general, probably for all of you. So maybe our logo could be our industry's logo. Well, I won't go that far, but and it's patented, of course. But I think when you see this logo again in the future, at any future talk of my colleagues, you will never forget anymore that you see here the publishing department and the sales department of Brill. And what you will hopefully also see is the operations department, or technology department. It's not the ugly head of the Medusa on the shield, that's not us. But it is the invisible arbiter between these two sides in the publishing house that I talked about. So, as I started, it's all about choices, and we are there to flag them and to help making them. Thank you.
Can we have any questions for Ove?
Ove, in your experience, you've been doing this for 7 years at Brill now, right? Yeah. Do you think it has gotten worse, or the pace has picked up, or has it stayed like more or less the same? Managing also what we talked about this morning, like managing innovation hype, technology hype, stuff like this?
Well, my impression is that it has certainly increased. Yeah. There are hype-driven discussions sometimes, but then there is just a very broad portfolio of activities that we need to support, and it's getting broader with every acquisition, with every new product type that we acquire. Each product type has their own business models. Just to give you an example, a bibliography, I don't know whether you even know still what this is. It's very peculiar. It's a collection of literature material, basically probably many people would call it an A&I database, but we still publish it in print, so also next to the online version. You cannot show the content because the content is the product, really. You cannot just show the hits because that's what people should pay for. So if you have to deal with such publication types where each of them is different and requires a different infrastructure, and we've had more of them over the last years, yes, the pace has increased.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Thank you, Ove.
Thank you very much.